Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Will. This is the Unfiltered Journey podcast. I appreciate you. Make sure you do this thing right here. Do that thing right there for me, okay? Appreciate you. You know the vibes. Like, comment, subscribe. Today's episode is going to be a bit personal. I'm going to give you a backstory to who I am and give you an understanding of why I chose to start this podcast. I'm not telling the story for any hype or any sympathy. I'm basically giving you the blueprint of who I am and who I was. And before I became anything later, I was the kid from Yonkers. And a lot of who I am today is that's where it started from. I'm not going to dress it up. I'm not going to water it down. I'm going to give it to you the way that I best remember a lot of my stuff and the experiences that I had to go through and get to. So let's get into it. But before we talk about growth and all of that, let me just take you back to where the mindset actually even came from. When growing up in the 914, you don't really think about it. You just kind of like live it. You know what I mean? Um, I was born in Mount Vernon, and I don't really remember much about Mount Vernon because I was only there for about like 3 or 4 years. But most of my life, I lived in Yonkers. And it's funny because my very first memory of Yonkers is me getting carried down a fire escape. That's a story for later. But when we think about the 914, it's Yonkers, it's Mount Vernon, it's New Rochelle. It's not picket fences and houses and people walking their dogs and nice cars. The Yonkers that I grew up in was pretty decent in my early ages. And that's something that I can remember. I did have a bike, I will tell you that much. But as I grew up, things did transition more or less for the worse. And we're talking about the 90s and going into the 2000s. But when we look at it, the corner stores, the arcades, the people, the sounds of the city, all of that created an experience for many of us who actually grew up in the 914 in the Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle area. Um, so it's not what they try to show you now on Instagram. I very much for progression. I appreciate the fact that they built up the waterfront and did everything in that downtown area. But we're talking about Getty Square. We're talking about Neperhan Avenue. We're talking about Main Street. We're talking about Elm Street. We're talking about Linden. We're talking about those areas where I really kind of got the experiences. I got a lot of what um, made me today, and I'm very much appreciative of it. Now, some things were worse than others, but it built a lot of character. It taught me a lot of lessons, and it made sure that I didn't want to repeat a lot of different things. And I don't want to ramble. I don't want to talk people's faces off, but there was a great pride of people, no matter what the situation was in Yonkers, right? So that's something that I take with me every day is being prideful about who I am. And I learned that on those streets. I learned that in that environment. Um, and that is what is most appreciative, right? Because you got to go back to the simplest things, right? Some people were just happy because they had something, and some people were just happy because of the experiences that they were getting, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. And it's something that you had to actually be there to experience. So, like me, we moved around a lot. You know, started out in Stanley, the very first memory that I have, which is coming down a fire escape. And most of my experiences, most of my lessons came from when we were living on Van Cortlandt. And that's how a lot of things transpired for me. But even then, in that environment, you still have your own little universe, you have your own home. And it's great because my house wasn't perfect, but it was what I knew. And we had our moments, good, bad, and different, like many others. So it's very much something that I cherish. And growing up, my mom and my dad were separated. I knew my dad for a while. Um, my dad passed away when I was 9, and that's gonna probably come up again in later episodes. But my mom predominantly raised me. My grandparents raised us um, along the way. I do have 3 brothers and a sister from my mom's side, and I got 3 sisters on my dad's side. So I did have a big family. We did have a lot of different personalities. We did have a lot of different issues. Um, but that's what most families, right? And the dynamic in the house at that time, my mom being a strong Black woman, the she's got to raise these kids on her own. I had 2 older brothers who had their own identity that, they were off doing their own thing. And then what was pretty much left, and you can kind of see it today, even if you know me, is myself, my younger brother, and my younger sister. Um, we've had our run ins, a lot of what I would say because of what I experienced and I had to deal with. Um, Created a bond, but also taught me a lot of lessons that I use today. Right, my grandparents raising us for a majority of our lives, very church going, very much in tune with trying to teach us the right thing and getting us on the right path. That would play a major part in our growth when it became very clear that my mom had an addiction. And around that time of me finding out that she had an addiction, I said it earlier, my dad had just passed away. And I had a lot of anger in me, like a lot of anger in me. And I felt like the world around me was just crumbling. Like, so I would lash out, fight with my siblings, have short fuses of anger. And when I say that, that lasted a very long time for me, like a very, very long time for me. But I'm very grateful because my grandparents really tried to give us that love and that structure to kind of like remind us that we're being loved, right? And I guess when you go through things, sometimes you don't have the proper outlets at that time to kind of deter you from that, right? Um, School wasn't it, because school gave me an opportunity just to act out even more. And that was the amazing thing about having grandparents, like having that mixture is my grandmother is a holy gangster. My grandfather was the quiet, very disciplined one. So we spent a lot of time with my grandmother. And when I tell you a lot of time with my grandmother, it was like a lot of time, as much as she could. When she came to Yonkers, because she lived in Mount Vernon, when she came to Yonkers, she made sure she picked us up and she took us out with her. Whether it was just to go take us to get some food, to do laundry, whatever it was, those grandmothers. You know what I mean? The ones that's missing today, that's the grandmother. But that dynamic that we had in my world, my own little universe, was not enough because I just felt like I had a hole here. You know what I mean? And they really did their best by us. So a lot of those issues that I had, I don't think they could have helped. They tried their best though. And that's why I'm forever grateful for them. That was the struggle that I had. And it was the chaos that was created. Not that they did it purposely. Nobody would want their parent to go away early in their life or find out their mom has an addiction. But those are the things that happen. And that led to me having to take some sort of responsibility as a young guy, being somewhat responsible for a younger brother and sister. But in reality, it's how could I teach them anything when I'm still learning stuff? And now I have this anger inside of me that became so unresolved that it got bad. That not only towards them, but towards other people who had nothing to do with that. And having that responsibility to try to fend for them or show them how to do things kind of hurt, because the two brothers that I was supposed to lean on, they were off in their own world. Rightfully so. You don't take that away from them. But it was just like we didn't have them. You know, they went on to have girlfriends and have kids early on in their lives. So they're already preoccupied with that. And then, this is the dynamic that we got to deal with my mom. And my grandmother is doing the best that she can by trying to keep us fed and clean clothes and things of that nature. And in that realm that we grew up in, it got bad pretty fast. And I think that's where a lot of our characteristics came from, because we had to learn how to fend for ourselves at a very young age. And it created a lot of different traits in us, good and bad. And it was something that, even when I talk about it in therapy, I kind of pause a lot, because when I think about it, I'm like, oh, okay, it wasn't my responsibility, but that was the situation, that was the environment that I was like left in. And my mom did the best that she could. Never take that away from her. She just ran into a wall. And as much as everybody tried to help, it just wasn't going through. And, it sucked, because there was a lot of times that, for instance, like the holidays, I remember one Christmas, it was so bad that we didn't get gifts, right? We wasn't getting gifts. And I remember we were growing up with some friends, and one of our friends' moms, they bought us a gift. And I distinctly remember, because the night before, we ended up going to, I don't even know if it's still there anymore, but we ended up going to C&H Martin's in Getty Square. And I remember this so vividly. We went there, they picked up a couple of toys, and we went back to their house. And that next morning, I literally unwrapped that gift. So it was just like, when I think about those things and I talk about them things in therapy, and I go, and I've gotten over that, but those are memories that's still there. And it's all the little things that I remember, that I cherish. Like our grandmother coming to pick us up, taking us to church. Like she would take us, with her for the full day. And I know this is probably a bad thing, but whatever. She used to play numbers. And back then, when we were growing up, and a lot of people know, if you grew up in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, these are the things that was going on, right? She was playing numbers. And this is why I said she's a gospel gangster, right? She would take us over to Main Street or to someplace over in Yonkers, and we would be able to run around in the street for a little bit. So those are the like little memories that I do remember, and everything like that. But it just so happens that that was my family, like that was my home life, and that's kind of like where I got myself into these characteristics and this traits, and then I started to learn how to be the person that I was then, right? So home taught me some things, but outside, man, outside was a whole nother teacher. Listen, you learn quick who to watch out for, who to trust, and when to mind your business when you're living in Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle. Where we lived at on Van Cortlandt, it became the drug block, basically. And our house, our apartment, became the apartment. At the height of everything that we were going through, that I was experiencing, as a kid, I'm 10, 11 years old, and we have the neighborhood drug dealer in the house bagging up. It was a mixture of the two. You had weed, you had, crack cocaine going on in there. And I remember at a certain point, we were sitting down at the table with them, bagging up with them. Being exposed to that at a young age kind of does things differently for you, because now I'm starting to realize like we need to make money. We need to be able to provide for ourselves, because we were waiting on we were waiting on the color money, the food stamps. We had the ones that you tear out the book. That's the one that we were getting. But at the end of the day, we were in such a bind that that's what my mom resorted to. Hey, yeah, you can do that here, and as long as you pay me. But learning that aspect of life did something to my mindset and said, well, we need a way to feed ourselves, because having grits for dinner is not the way. Can't wait till you go to grandma's house on Sunday and get Sunday dinner. Um, that was the experience that kind of changed the way I thought about a lot of different things. And I had friends that I wish stuck around for a while, because the influence that they did have, I think, could have deterred me from that. And I'm pretty sure it would have deterred me from that. So it was different, because my best friend at the time, Andre Fuller, this is what I remember. Uh, his mom, really cool dude. And like, that was my go to. We lived right next to each other, like the buildings. I'm on 2, he's in 4. And we would see each other every day. We hang out every day, everything, Um, but when he moved away, it kind of like really changed a lot of different things. And already being exposed to this, now him moving away, it's like, what's happening? You know, Losing a lot of friends, whether they moved away, I had a few friends die early. It changes the way you approach life, and it changes how you look at people, because that told me that I need to watch everybody around me and how they are. And the reason why that happened was because I remember distinctly my aunt had bought me a Dreamcast at the time. And I had the Dreamcast for maybe about a week. And doing those activities in the house, these guys will come in, do whatever, had basic free reign of the house. And as a 10, 11-year-old kid, 12-year-old kid, they took advantage of that, you know. And for a long time, I never forgave this guy, but I kind of did now at the end of it all, because it's like, whatever. But that taught me that I needed to watch people and learn how to read people for who they really are. Um, and at such a young age, it's like, that's a very big responsibility. But there's a difference between fun and danger, and it just being this close, you know? And I had to learn that lesson of watching people and learning who they are, who to trust, who not to, who to kind of use for your benefit when you need it. And learning that lesson by knowing that that person came into our house, took our stuff. And even when I noticed it, like, yo, isn't that my Dreamcast? No, that's not yours. But I'm 12. I don't have my older brothers around. What can I do? You know what I mean? And that made me really look at people differently. Like, oh, when I say the trust level of people kind of went down. When you're losing friends, whether they either move away or they passed away, now you got people who come into your house who's supposed to be like, quote unquote, your role models, and they just basically take advantage of you. Not they, he took advantage of me, of us, and that was something that was really heartbreaking, because that was somebody that I actually looked up to until that moment. And then I just realized that everybody is it's not who they say they are. And I realized that, like, certain things that was happening in our neighborhood, not everybody was going to make it out. But you learn that, and you adapt to those situations, and you try your best to maneuver around at the age that you are with whatever guidance that you have. And with all that going on, there was a few moments in life that really changed how I moved. So I remember this one time, and that's when I realized that things could change really fast. We were outside, and across the street is an older couple. The guy was crazy. He would throw beans at us, throw hot water, like to get us from sitting on his stoop. But the thing that made me realize how things can go fast, like change that quick, was when I watched this older guy. I don't remember his name. He literally had a heart attack, died. That was it. It was all. And it was like life can change for you in that instant. Like that made me be like, oh wow, like, and it was right in front of me, and my brother was outside as well. And there was other events that happened that really kind of started to create defining moments for me where I just had to really rethink things. Now, it didn't happen overnight. What really kind of got that moment, what really woke me up was those same people that was quote unquote the role models for me, the neighborhood drug dealers. They started to fall off. And things was happening where the same things that they were peddling, they were now starting to get involved with. And you can see them deteriorating. And it's just like, this is what it does to you. Now, mind you, now I have a mother who is addicted, but she's one of those, what they would call it, a functional addict. She would get up, go to work, do what she got to do, but then mismanage a lot of different things. And those wake up moments made me realize I'm literally just entering high school at the point, and I still have this temper. It took for me to get kicked out of Roosevelt for me to really realize, like, you got to change your life. You're literally watching people die. You're literally watching your mom be this, and this is what you're about to put yourself into. Getting kicked out of Roosevelt was a blessing and a curse because that temper of mine got me into a lot of trouble. I end up eventually getting kicked out of all of New York pretty much. And I was told like the only thing I could do is either go to school out of state or get a GED. And after spending some time in Valhalla for the incident that landed me there, because I got into a fight with a security guard from the school, um, one of the guys inside the jail was like, yo, why you here? And I was like, I got into a fight. We talked about it. And I remember him during rec time when we were outside. He's like, yo, let me talk to you. And I want to say he was a few years older than me. He's like, yo, don't come back here, bro. When you get out of here, don't come back. And I think that was like one of those moments where I kind of felt like somebody did care outside of my immediate family, that it kind of turned on a light bulb, because I didn't like the situation that I was in. And I was like, again, but that moment was forever changing for me because he didn't have to say that. He could have chose to say anything else to me, but he said, don't come back here. And that stuck with me because we didn't know each other at all. But that was the moment that actually planted the seed for me to change. And that made me realize that I needed to grow into something different. When I got home from that and I went through the process of getting a PO, it was a surreal moment that that person didn't care for me because my PO tells me you have 2 weeks to get a job or I'm sending you back. I'm getting two different emotions, right? I'm getting two different characteristics. I'm getting somebody who is in jail telling me not to come back, and somebody who's out of jail who's supposed to be guiding me is telling me I'm gonna send you back. And it really was shifting my mindset on who to look at, where to get my advice from, and what I need to do to get more control of my life. Throughout this journey, throughout this transition that I was going through, I eventually ended up getting my GED. I kind of locked in. I was living at grandparents' house. I locked in. I got my GED. I was working. The PO, you know, he said what he said. I ended up getting a job. My mom was doing better. She was actually the one that helped me get the job. The job that I'm at now. I've been there for 20 plus years. Um, in that job, I made a good friend and an older guy. And he really taught me a lot, like work ethic. He taught me respect. He taught me a lot of different things that, like, I drew so close to him that it was like I would go to him for all my information. And working that job, like, I literally thought I was the shit. I ain't gonna lie to you. Pardon my language. I don't like cursing a lot, but this is the time I was making like $6.25 an hour. But I was working like 55, 60 hours, 70 hours sometimes. And I was coming home with some money, thinking that's real money. And it was crazy because he cared enough for me to be like, have conversations with me outside of work, redirect my mindset, explain things to me that because of the way I thought about things, he redirected that. And that much, like, his name was George. And that much I really respected for him because that really helped my growth. Like, that really helped me shift into those things. And so upon that, like, I got my GED and I literally find out the day that I received my diploma that I got my GED that I was having a kid. And it's funny because it's like, you ever wonder why like certain things happen? And you ever think to yourself, like, I don't get it. Start to make this change and then this happens. And then I start to do this and then this happens. When I reflected on it, I realized that those things were happening because that was the time that it was supposed to happen. Because in the sense of me growing, the universe, God, felt like I needed something else to keep me growing. And very grateful for my first child because at the moment that I did, I will honestly tell you I was in a conflicted area because I was happy that I started to really see some transitions, but then I was like, what is really out there for me? So I do have some good people telling me good things, but then I have people who doubted me, right? And the people who doubted me were supposed to give me guidance, and the people who saw potential in me didn't have to care about me, but they gave me that, right? My boss, who I work for, when he found out, I was like, I'm going back to college. I don't think I can do this anymore. He literally said to me, he goes, well, which college you going to go to? I was thinking of some online college. He said, no, we're not doing that. You're going to talk to the controller. He's going to set you up. We're going to send you to Mercy or something, Valhalla and WCC, and we'll get you into a real college and help you get your degree. Barely knew me, knew that I worked there. He knew my name. He knew me, but he saw potential in me. He didn't have to go out of his way. to do that. And that much, it's like you'll hear me use this word a lot, especially throughout episodes. That made me very grateful because those conversations with George, my boss, showing the intent to see my potential has helped craft me as a person, change my mindset, right? I started to look at things differently. I started to realize I can be more creative than what my environment was telling me that I can be creative to, right? And when I say creative to, it's what they dictated to us in those environments, right? We've always gotten the cliche story that when you come up in the hood, the only thing you could be is what? A rapper, a drug dealer, or a ball player. But they gave me the insight that you can be more than that, right? And that allowed me to learn that I saw a very raw and real image of myself beyond the block. I became more thoughtful into what I wanted to be and how that would make me grow into something different. And even with growth, there's a part of me of Yonkers that stayed with me, good and bad. You don't always get the big dramatic exit. Sometimes your mindset starts moving before your body does. And even with growth, there's some parts of Yonkers that stays with me, good and bad. I didn't realize growing up in Yonkers was teaching me more than a classroom. Throughout a lot of what I went through, it did teach me loyalty, did teach me respect. I learned how to hustle. I figured out awareness. I've adapted to the environment that created pressure, and I saw people for who they are and what it's like to protect who you are, your name, and your word. Yonkers created an environment of lessons that crafted me into this person. So, good, bad, or indifferent, I have to be grateful for Yonkers and the environment that I had. It wasn't ideal, but it was very helpful in what it created and how proud of myself I am today. So when I think about those things, I say to myself, this is why I have a level of respect for people. This is why I have a level of loyalty to people. This is why I have a level of honor for people because those lessons and experiences. Now, I didn't say everything, but those lessons and experiences has created those values for me. Those values that I look at that I look at for myself, I look at for people. You know, respect and honor is a real thing for me. Loyalty is a real thing for me. Integrity is a real thing for me because although everybody didn't move in the most pleasant way, a lot of people lived off those values. And those are the things that Yonkers has really taught me that a classroom didn't teach me. And now looking back at that kid that I was, he's still in me. I'm not him anymore. I don't allow it to determine who I became today. I allow it the space to continue to remind me of the lessons that I've learned so I can continue to be a better person for tomorrow. The amazing thing about that is that some people will try to erase where they come from. I mean, I don't run from it. I just don't live stuck in it, right? Yonkers raised me, but it didn't limit me. And I'm proof that wherever you come from, you can still write a different story. It doesn't have to be romanticized, it doesn't have to be exaggerated, but you have to respect it. Talk about the experiences as they are. but realize that you're not trapped by where you come from. How you carry your story shouldn't be as baggage, but as fuel to project you into another lane that you're really trying to live for yourself. But listen, I appreciate everybody who listened today. If you're from a place that shaped you, like me, even if you're from Yonkers and you remember me, hey, comment, tell me where you were from. Even if you want to share a short story, it doesn't matter where you come from. It matters where you're going. So I appreciate you all for listening. I truly invite you all to share your own story. The next episode won't be so personal, but we will be here for the next episode. This is the Unfiltered Journey podcast. I'm Will, and I appreciate you all for tuning in. Make sure you do that thing right there. Peace.